Hello and welcome to the May 9th edition of This Week in South Carolina in session. I'm Gavin Jackson here at the State House in Columbia. Well, we just wrapped up the second to last day of the 2018 legislative session, and we have seen a couple bills that are still kicking, that are still alive and going back and forth between the two chambers. Bills that would prohibit drones from flying over prisons or military installations, bill that would prohibit people from littering with a cigarette butt either on public or private property, also the state's waterways. We also saw a lot of movement dealing with bills that would also include overhauling the state's disturbing schools law. That's that really controversial, broadly written law that is on the books that means that students can get arrested just for disturbing schools. We have some more details on all those bills, as well as two major bills in the Senate that were actually did move to second reading. They got their second reading today, and those bills are utility-based reforms in light of the VC summer nuclear debacle. So one bill does repeal the controversial Baseload Review Act, which was the law put in place in 2007 that allowed SC&G to charge customers in advance for those nuclear reactors that never really got built. The buildings was in process, but as we all know, it kind of failed since the designs were not completed and a lot of companies involved went belly up. So this big situation there with the Baseload Review Act. Another bill that is on special order in the Senate deals with creating a utility consumer advocate. So this advocate would go before the Public Service Commission, which is one of the state's regulators when it comes to utility rates, to kind of represent the consumer before that regulatory body. So those two bills got second reading, but the bills are still up for debate in the Senate tomorrow, and they can still be amended. So there's a lot of bills that got pushed over to third reading in the Senate, which can still be debated tomorrow, obviously, and amended. We also did see lawmakers take up the sine die resolution, which allows them to come back after sine die, which is tomorrow at 5 p.m. It allows them to come back after that day on May 23rd and May 24th to take up the state budget. Remember, the budget still hasn't passed the chambers yet. There is a conference committee dealing with the budget, but they are meeting next week. They put off any meetings this week just because it is the final week. So they'll be back May 23rd or May 24th to take up that budget, as well as any VC summer bills. So remember, those two bills we just talked about, they could be carried over if they are not voted upon tomorrow, final between the House and the Senate. So they can be carried over along with the budget, and a number of other things such as appointments can also be taken up after sine die. Also, the legislature under that sine die resolution can also come back June 27th and 28th, and that'll be to take up budget vetoes as well as those other items such as VC summer related bills or the budget itself, but the budget will have been passed at that point. So it will be budget vetoes from the governor as well as any other vetoes at that point. And we did see a conference committee on 954 happen today. That's that bill dealing with utility rates for SC&G customers. They're paying that 18% per month premium on their electric bills. This bill would actually either lower the bills by 13% or by the entire 18%. We didn't see any action today happen. We just saw lawmakers meet up and say that they needed to see more action happen on the two bills before the Senate today, which was that one repealing the Baseload Review Act and also dealing with the consumer advocates. So they wanted to wait and see how those move and then obviously go back to this 954 bill. So a lot happening, but we do want to give you some more details on what happened on the Senate floor right now before we get into those other bills that I talked about.
4375, and I'll just talk about the Judiciary amendment because it strikes a good bit of things that were in the original version. The House bill had a lot of language in it, but what the Senate Judiciary Committee version would do is it would cut off everything with the Baseload Review Act as soon as the existing litigation ends. The PSC could accept no more applications regarding Baseload Review Act. Right, so the only thing that they could ever consider would be those things that are pending now. Everything else would be prohibited. And so therefore, you essentially repeal the Baseload Review Act going forward. Also, the language in the House version included definitions, statutory definitions for imprudence and prudence, because those are very important terms, especially in the case that the PSC has to consider regarding the Baseload Review Act going forward. We modified those definitions some. They included some examples, and we pulled those examples out at the subcommittee level. So now it's really kind of a Merriam-Webster definition of what imprudence is and prudence is. And those really are the only. This bill 4379 is a bill that it deals primarily with the consumer advocate. There are 4 main bullet points that I want to hit on. The primary one is, so we already have a consumer advocate. The advocate just doesn't deal with utility rate cases. And so what we would do in the Judiciary Committee amendment is we would have the consumer advocate who is at the Department of Consumer Affairs, which is different than the bill that was passed by the House of Representatives. They had the consumer advocate at the Attorney General's office. We've got it in the Department of Consumer Affairs because there's already a consumer advocate there who does other issues, and they've got that experience. So we thought that made sense. However, right now, the consumer advocate has to have 3 years of legal experience. We upped that to a minimum requirement of 8 years legal experience. I think that was the Senator from Darlington's suggestion because that's the requirement, I believe, for judges. And so we added that increased qualification for the consumer advocate. Importantly, what this does is it would require that the Public Service Commission notify the consumer advocate on any proceeding that is filed before the Public Service Commission and that could impact consumers' rates.
And we did see House lawmakers move along a bill that would overhaul the state's disturbing schools law. That's that broadly written, very controversial bill that allows students to get arrested for minor disturbances or even just fighting, roughhousing, things that usually are taken care of disciplinarily in-house. This bill, actually, the law currently allows students to get arrested in some cases. So this would actually outlaw that, and it would only allow students that are either suspended or expelled to get arrested going forward. So this bill is one step away essentially from the governor's desk, and also it also outlines outlaws students from making any sort of threats of violence either towards the school or towards students. So this is kind of a catch-all bill. It's the closest bill we've seen dealing with any school-related violence or school safety issues outside of the budget. So here's some more details about that.
This is extremely important. This bill deals with our overly broad South Carolina disturbing schools law. As you've probably gotten a lot of complaints from parents whose children get in fights at school or who are disrespectful to a teacher, and essentially what happens is the school actually calls a resource officer in, and that person is charged under the criminal penalty, and as a result, a lot of folk exit school with a criminal record. A court has reviewed the South Carolina disturbing school statute, has determined that it is overly broad. This bill by Senator McLeod applies the disturbing school statute only to non-students who willfully interfere with, disrupt, or disturb the normal operations of a school. The bill specifies that what actions constitute a violation of the statute: entering the school without permission, loitering after being asked to vacate and failing to do so within a reasonable time, initiating or participating in an assault, being boisterous after being asked to cease the behavior, threatening physical harm to a student or employee while on school grounds, or threatening deadly force on a student while on school grounds, or involving the school grounds if the person has the present ability to carry out the threat. Penalty is up to 1 year in prison, up to $2,000 or both. The bill also makes it illegal, which is a part of current statute, to threaten a student's life or threaten physical harm to another regardless of the form of communication. So essentially what we're doing is allowing the school's disciplinary system to work for those children who violate the school disciplinary process, and for criminal behavior, any criminal behavior will be handled under our existing laws. So only persons who are non-students who come into the school who cause this type of disruptive behavior will be charged under the South Carolina Disturbing Schools Law.
And we caught up with Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. He's a Republican from Edgefield, to find out what he thought about this year's session so far, as well as the likelihood of these utility reform bills getting passed, and if that Superintendent of Education ballot referendum bill will get through the Senate. What he did tell us after the cameras turned off is that he does not expect that plastic bag ban bill, which would prohibit municipalities across the state from implementing their own ordinances outlawing single-use plastic bags. So that bill is dead. And these other 3 bills that I just talked about are still kicking. Superintendent of Education bill needs a 3rd reading in the Senate tomorrow to be viable to go forward back to the House to concur with any changes they did there. So a lot needs to happen in the Senate tomorrow, dealing with some key pieces of legislation, according to Senator Massey.
You know, you can always do more. And you can always look back and say, I wish we could have gotten this done. I wish we could have gotten that done. But I actually think if you go back from January and you look forward, we've tackled some important things. I mean, we've done a lot to help bolster our economic development in South Carolina, whether it be with manufacturing and with agriculture. Both are huge parts of South Carolina's economy. We've spent a lot of time talking about the VC summer situation and ways to address that. And I'm hopeful that this week we're going to be able to get resolution on lots of those things. So I think that's productive. We've done a lot of things in between. I think overall we've had the opportunity to impact lots of South Carolina in different ways. That's for the betterment of South Carolina. There's always more that you could have done, but I'm pleased right now where we are. Now, this being optimistic that we're going to get these things passed in the next couple of days, but right now I'm pleased with where we are. I'm not giving up on that yet. There's still a possibility we could take that up under a special priority rule today for 3rd reading. I think that's unlikely today because the Base Load Review Act debate and consumer advocate debate could take a little while. So I think tomorrow is a possibility. I'm not throwing in the towel on Superintendent of Education yet. I think we've still got a chance.
And as I said earlier before, there is a bill still kicking around that would prohibit people from littering cigarette butts from their cars or while walking on public or private property that is not their own private property or waterways in the state. It could fine people up to $100 if they are caught littering with cigarette butts. Another 2 bills, one dealing with outlawing drones flying around state prisons, is also moving forward, as well as another one that would prohibit drones flying from military bases. So those 2 bills are still alive, as is a comprehensive opioid bill that we saw House lawmakers concur with senators on that would require prescribers to come up with report cards to describe their prescribing habits. This deals with opioids to make sure prescribers are kind of acting in good faith and over-prescribing opioids, and would also limit the number of days a person could get an opioid prescription to 7 days in certain situations. So that bill is heading to the governor now, and there's just some more details with some other opioid-related bills coming forward, but we're going to choose some more details about those tomorrow. But right now we also want to talk about the retirement of Sergeant at Arms Jim Melton. He's the Senate Sergeant at Arms. Melton had served in the Senate for 40 years and became Sergeant at Arms in 1990 and held the position ever since. The governor attended a ceremony today at the Senate to bestow upon him the Order of the Palmetto, and he also received accolades from fellow members. And that was really great to see Jim get honored right there. 40 years of service is definitely very impressive, and I know he was very honored by those lawmakers and the governor today, so very cool to see. And just want to give you another update on one bill. We've been watching that marching band bill that would allow marching band students to use their time at practice to count towards physical education credits. This bill has become quite controversial and is now in a conference committee. And we should point out that conference committees that are meeting after sine die, which is again Thursday at 5 p.m., those bills are still alive and can still be taken up if they get moved out of those conference committees. And the conference committees really deals with, it's 3 House members and 3 Senate members, and they're hashing out the differences between their 2 versions of a bill. So we've seen the conference committee with the SC&G rate bill, this marching band bill, and several others. So it will be interesting to see where this goes. There's probably some little minor hangups, but people, it's been getting kind of caught in translation is what it seems like. So a lot of it has to deal with education requirements for this marching band bill. So regardless, we'll be bringing you the latest on those bills, especially as we cover the last day of session tomorrow, Thursday, which starts at 10 a.m. And you can watch those proceedings on scstatehouse.gov, or you can watch the Senate proceedings on ETV, on your local ETV station. So be sure to check that out. And we will have a live recap for you like we did every day during the session at 7 p.m. on SCTV's Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson. You can also catch a recap on South Carolina Public Radio at State House Week, which airs on Fridays with Russ McKinney. And we'll be recapping the week again on South Carolina Lead, which is the podcast I host with reporters who cover the State House to go behind the scenes and get some more insight and context on the biggest stories facing the state. So I'm Gavin Jackson at the State House here in Columbia for the second to last day of the legislative session.